That was my biggest mess up to date in business because that really took a toll on me and the community, probably me more than anyone actually, because of the guilt and the shame and the I can't believe I did this. Now I have to come clean, blah blah blah. And actually, that was a moment where I decided to bring my community in on that.
Welcome to Who Cares About My Story, the podcast on how sharing your personal brand story can impact your business. We will explore the perks and also the behind-the-scenes challenges of figuring out what to share. I'm your host, Reme Mancera, a personal brand strategist who loves finding the story connectors that illustrate the benefits of what you offer. And by the way, you don't need a Hollywood style for that. In case you ever wonder, remember, your story is relevant and worth telling. Hi there, I am thrilled to bring you today's episode. Our guest is Hannah Dixon, a virtual assistant and freelancer coach, recruiter, and the founder of Digital Nomad Kit. Hannah has trained over 30,000 people to start and thrive their online businesses. Fun fact, I was one of them. As a recruiter, she's really good at connecting great global talent with great opportunities. In this episode, Hannah talks about her journey from the most diverse work background, like jobs on farms, in fashion, in construction, in bars, in hostels, to becoming a leading voice in the online space, helping others achieve their dream lifestyle. During our conversation, Hannah discusses the challenges and rewards of being authentic and vulnerable as a business owner. Hannah also highlights the power of community and how building a strong, supportive network has multiplied her impact. Discover Hannah's story and how it all started when some people in some Facebook groups asked her, "How are you doing this?" This episode is full of valuable insights and inspiration. Now, let's start. Welcome, Hannah. Thank you so much for being here. I am so thrilled to have you. So thank you very much for accepting this invitation.
Thank you for having me. I've been really excited about this. Finally came around.
Yay! So let's dive in. Could you please tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure. My name's Hannah, obviously. I am a virtual assistant and freelance coach and recruiter. So I help people to start businesses online, doing service-based things in tech, creative, or administrative fields. And I help those who want to hire them, getting them connected with really great talent globally. So that's pretty much the most of what I do. I do a bunch of stuff, but that's the main thing.
Great. So what's your story? How did you get here?
hmm It's kind of a long, winding story, so I'll try and give you the most important points. I never had a path where I was like, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, ever, ever, ever. I still don't. Everything that has happened in my career has happened by, I would say, a combination of chance, circumstance, interest, curiosity, and some not so nice events as well, I'd say. But I started my career, well, let's start before the career. I started traveling when I was very young. Um, I started because I was interested in it. It was something to do. It was actually an art teacher of mine who said to me one day, "What are you going to do in the summer holidays?" And I was like, "I don't know." I was 16. She's like, you have a passport. You can travel. You can go around Europe." And I was like, wow, oh my God, that is a possibility. I'd never considered that. I had next to no money, of course, being 16, but I did an interrail trip with my friend and we ate a loaf of bread for about 10 days between us. But that was it for me. I was like, I want to travel. I love this. Like this got me. I grew up in a kind of like a low income suburb of London, and it was like mind opening, mind altering for me to see that there was this world outside that was like rich and fruitful and full of amazing people and things and sights to see. And so that for me, I was hooked. I was like, oh my God, I just want to keep traveling. Obviously continued to stay in school for some time. I began university and I quit university because I found myself in a very, very abusive relationship, to the point that I was locked in a house for months at a time. So I left university. I was sort of separated from my family, friends, all of that stuff. And when I finally had the courage after a few attempts to leave that relationship, I decided again that I would prioritize travel above all else. Because for me, travel wasn't just this thing that I was interested in. It also became my freedom. It also became like me taking ownership again of my path and my independence and self-sufficiency and all those things. So I began traveling again, and again, I had really next to no money. I did land a job briefly in fashion, but we don't need to talk about that. It sucked. And with that money that I'd saved a little with that job, I went and I started doing work exchanges around the world. So working on farms and bars and hostels. I even worked with husky dogs in Austria for some time. And that was great. I feel like I learned so much in that time just about different ways of living, different ideas about the world. And again, just continuously expanding what I believe to be possible in the world, not only for other people, but for me. I started to see it for me. And I found myself in Italy. And I know that you've probably heard this story a million times because you're in my world to a degree online. But I found myself in Italy and I was working on a construction site. And some of the people that I'd worked with in fashion years before had said, come to this party in Milan. And I showed up with like cement and plaster all over my clothes and paint. And like my hair was a weird cut because I didn't even go to the hairdresser. I just did it myself. And they were like, what are you going to wear to the party? And I was like, oh, this is like a really like high flying party and this is what I've got. And so I decided then I needed to make some money. Like this was all fun and great, but I needed to have an income and that would greatly elevate my experience traveling. And so I went back to the UK to do what everyone told me to do, which was to get a real job. And maybe go back to school, blah, 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 the traditional trajectory. I got a job in a bar, and I'll make this part short, but I got a job in a bar, met somebody who worked online. All I heard was, hold on a second, you work online? Tell me everything you know. I need to know. Can you do this from anywhere? Oh my God, bought my first laptop. She did very generously teach me all she knew. We started a business together, which eventually morphed into the business I have today, Digital Nomad Kit. She was a web developer and she had clients who needed other things. They needed social media, they needed administrative work, they needed customer support. So I started picking up these odd pieces and ends. And it wasn't until one of my clients referred to me on a team call as her virtual assistant that I even knew this was a thing. And I was like, oh, cool. I have a job title now. I'm not just like the odd jobs person. So that was a cool, and that was a really big turning moment for me because I was like, I could actually like give sort of an identity what I was doing and start talking about it. And I started a Facebook group at the time because I became aware of what digital nomads were. That was a whole new term for me as well. I was doing it, but I didn't know what it meant. We were living in Sardinia and Budapest and all these cool places. And so I started a Facebook group because I was like, that's like one demographic that's dominating the space. And it's not so much the case now. It's definitely not so much the case now. But, way back then it was, you would Google digital nomad and you would conjure up images of like muscly guys in Chiang Mai talking about, living on $300 a month and getting girlfriends out there. And I was like, I don't really vibe with that. So let me start a Facebook group. I want to see if there's other people like me out there, women, queer people of color, just like where's everyone else? And that Facebook group grew pretty quickly. And as that group was growing, my career was growing very quickly as well. I invested in mentors. I learned everything I could. And I was earning a pretty substantial income and I was sharing about that. And people began to ask me, how are you doing this? And so everything that exists today, skip forward 10 years later, I've now trained over 30,000 people. We are currently listed as the #1 training resource for virtual assistants and freelancers on a couple of major review sites. And that all started because some people in some Facebook groups asked me, how are you doing this? And I started telling them and they started getting results. And, many iterations later, that is my story in a nutshell.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I love how organically that was happening when you started just sharing your journey. And thanks to that group, I also meet you and knew about your program and your amazing challenge and all that. So maybe
Very cool.
we will go to that later in the conversation. And yes, so I love I like how you found how traveling was freedom expression and your way of owning your path. And I, I s- I resonate a lot with this idea of not knowing what to do in your like people know, like I remember being in my school 5 years old or something like that, having a mate. She was like, yeah, I want to be a teacher, and I said, I don't know. And then like 20 years later, I still don't know, and 10 years later, I still don't know. So having that feeling of people have things figured out and I don't know what to
Mm,
do. So
yep, totally.
so yeah, and it's curious about how you realized that you were a virtual assistant, even you didn't know the name, but you were doing that, and then you are
Mhm.
like one a big coach for all of the new ones, and maybe there are people knowing about the term because of your work and your
Mm,
group and your challenge and all that. So it's kind of interesting how that could be a circle now for people learning about that role because of you.
that's very true. That's very true. I haven't thought about that.
So how do you think telling your own story has impacted your business?
Mm. Well, I wouldn't have a business without telling my story, I feel, for one. If we just look back to the Facebook group times, if I hadn't been sharing, nothing today would exist. But I think on a deeper level, I think over the years I've become much more comfortable talking about my journey and my own career, my own personal, things that I've gone through, like that a relationship I went through. Um, just some aspects of my childhood, like starting to talk about that stuff has actually only helped me and the people I serve. And I say that because a couple of things. One, it's been very freeing for me because I felt like for a long time, if I'm completely honest, I feel like my business was kind of like a wall that kept me between, like, from being me, really me. I could hide behind my brand, right? I could hide behind
Mm,
Digital Nomad Kit. Um, and so there was a level of safety in that, but then it also became very heavy to hold. I was like, I don't feel like I can be me. And I've created a career where I'm very visible and I don't feel like me. And it's like this painful thing now to show up and feel like I'm hiding at the same time.
mm,
And so starting to tell my story in a way where I own how I tell it, um, has been really empowering for me. But on the flip side of that, I feel like it's helped the people that need to work with me best, like the most, to find me.
mm,
And it's helped me differentiate from other people. And it's helped me reach the people that I really want to empower. Maybe people who were me 20 years ago in situations I might have been in, um, or who share identities with me. Maybe they're queer, maybe they're neurodivergent, to see me and say, okay, I can do this too. So I think on both sides, it's been really powerful for me personally, but also for the people I work with. And I feel like a lot of the people I work with, whether they work with me once or repeatedly, they stay in my world. One of my things is community. So people stay in my world, and I feel like we all change together. And the more I share, the more they feel comfortable sharing too. And we build this such an amazing community that will, for honestly, for many of us will last a lifetime. I know a lot of people have made great friends and connections from this. So I think beyond the business side of things, it's the connections and the feeling of having your people.
mm. Yeah, 100%. And I have experienced that in the community that you have built, how supportive and how it's a space where you know that there will be people taking care if you need some words or for some advice or just someone listening to you. And
Mm.
it's a really supportive community. And I believe that that's just reflection of who is the leader and who is the like the first step of that community. So yeah. So something also interesting to me is how by you sharing all this process, because it's like, okay, first I was under this facade of my
Hmm.
business, and how you have been growing in the term of how you have been more confident, more comfortable sharing more or different aspects of your own journey. I believe also this is like, again, like kind of leading by example, because as your community they can see how, okay, now I am allowing myself to do
Mm.
that in my own path. It's not like just following these cookie cutter formulas that I can listen everywhere. So I believe that could be also inspiring. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so too, because I don't feel like I have. Well, I said I've invested in mentors and things. I always see things as like every framework, every template is very loose in my mind. I've always been of the mind that you should make everything your own and bring yourself to the table because especially in the entrepreneurial world, if you're starting something or you're building a business, what is the point in doing it if you're not doing it from a place of intention where you get to be you? Because I've done that for a short while when it wasn't fun. Um, and so I think that, yeah, 100%, I guess leading by example in that sense makes sense to me because that's what other people are now doing. So I'm like, I have these resources and these frameworks, but please make them your own. Please show up in a way that feels good for you. And here's some things that you can research to help you get there, but I can't be you, you know? And I think that's the
Mm.
thing that I'm like, and you can't be me at the end of the day. So we have
Yeah.
to build something from a place of true intentionality and bring ourselves to the table. And a big part of that is, of course, bringing your story into things. And it doesn't need to be telling your story of your childhood or whatever. It can be, here's how I messed something up with my client last week, and here's how I fixed it. It's vulnerability. It's showing up good and bad, no matter what is going on in your business, and knowing that all of it's okay because the people that are supposed to be working with you will find you and be attracted to that.
Yeah, and I always like to highlight how, like, for you to share something that is relevant for your audience or for the people that you want to work with, it doesn't need to be about all the details that you are sharing about that
Yeah.
specific moment of your story. It's
Mm-hmm.
about the lessons that you learn from that experience and the emotions that you live, and all of that is going to connect and will resonate, and people will see how you are someone relatable and someone trustworthy. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't need to go into the revealing private details.
Exactly. I feel like there's a lot to be said for making sure that you share your story in a responsible way as well. And I feel like, and I will say probably one of the downsides, and I know that we're probably going to talk about that as well, but one of the downsides of sharing my story has been that I have been on the receiving end of a little bit of trauma dumping, I would call it, honestly,
Mm.
where people send me very explicit graphic details of their lives. And I'm like, I'm not a therapist. And so, then reflecting back to them that maybe there's a more appropriate way to share your story in a way that can uplift others. And if you're not ready to tell it, you know, maybe it's time to work on with that with a therapist or something like that. Um, but I think you're right, like making sure that you're in a place where you're ready to share something,
Mm.
and that sharing something is empowering others, not getting them down, not making them feel trauma triggered or anything like that. It's about ensuring that what you're sharing is still moving people in a positive direction, especially if you're in a position of leadership. I think that's really essential.
Mm. And you know how people say that you share when it's a wound? No, when it's a scar, not when it's a wound, because
Hmm.
then it's like still bleeding and you are not in the other side where you can talk from the experience of how is the whole process. So sometimes it's also, I believe, about that.
Yeah.
And in the other hand, it could be also a way of for you to process some of this information or some of these experiences, but you need to first, I believe you need to first ask yourself, okay, how comfortable I am sharing this, or in which capacity, because you can go and maybe in your
Yeah.
social media sharing in a way, and then in your newsletter in a different way, or in your private group of um, students you can go in more details or sharing in a different way that will be also helpful for them.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Okay, so can you recall a specific moment when you realized how impactful was to share your personal brand story?
I think, yeah, there's a few moments. I had written a post once and I don't really remember what it was about specifically, but I remember it was like more of a storytelling piece.
Mm-hmm.
And the response to that surprised me. I had a lot of people just reach out, and actually, one that really stood out and said to me, I knew that was your story. That's why I felt compelled to work with you. And just hearing you say it validated that my own intuition about you was correct. And I was like, you know what?
Wow.
As cliche as that term is, your vibe really does attract your tribe. And I think it really was validating for people to see themselves in me and for me to see myself in them as well. And realize that. you don't just automatically connect with people for no reason. Like there is always this subconscious feeling of knowing in when you meet someone, right? Like I don't know exactly your story, but I feel like we would share some sort of understanding about how life goes or what we've lived. And so that was really a big turning point for me because I was like, oh, it isn't by chance that these people are in my community, you know? So that was really insightful. And then I think another one was when I first spoke on a stage, because absolutely terrifies me doing that, still to this day. But the first time I did it, I was like, I'm going to go big or I'm not going to do it at all. And I spoke in front of 500 people, and that was my first ever speaking engagement. And I didn't tell anything like particularly deep about my story, but I still shared parts of myself. And that still at that time, just sharing anything was really quite scary. And it was received to a standing ovation. And I was like, I was the only standing ovation that day. And I was like, hell yeah, this stuff's important. And
And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I just think that was a really big turning point for me because I was like, okay, like if I really want to connect with these people, I have to be able to give a little bit, a little bit, not everything, definitely not everything. I think everyone deserves their privacy, but I was like, I need to show up in such a way that people feel like I'm a real person here. Like I can hold this because I'm a real person. I'm not just like some business person that doesn't give a crap. I do give a crap. Um, and me showing up demonstrated that, I feel.
Mm. And I believe I remember that time. And I remember when I first heard about you and how you said this sentence that hit home, like embrace your weirdness. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, yeah, because it's like, yeah, it's like owning that you are so unique, and it's
Mm.
like that's what the beauty is. So each of us, we are bringing different side of an approach, so owning and embracing it. So it was really empowering to hear that from someone else.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. And actually, to add to that, I would say that what we talked about before about how, you can get frameworks from people or whatnot and then make them your own. I feel like for a lot of the first part of my journey, I was just kind of figuring stuff out. And I came up with like, it's gonna sound ridiculous, but I came up with like all these terms and phrases that like made sense to me, like embrace your weird. Then as soon as I started immersing myself in the online space, I was like, oh, they call that authenticity. And then like I'm like, I used to call like, the elevator pitch, I call it the declaration. Then I'm like, oh, it's called an elevator pitch. So I'm like, okay, we've got our own words for stuff over here.
And it's like how you were doing your VA thing without knowing the title. So you
Exactly.
were like doing statements without knowing the regular
Exactly.
name that they did. Yeah. So before that time, have you ever questioned yourself, like thinking about who will care about your story, and questioning about sharing your story?
Yes, 100%. I think part of the who will care is not necessarily, I mean, to a degree, maybe in the beginning, like, is someone going to judge me? Is someone going to think badly of me? But I think more it's been, uh, it's been more of kind of who in my family will listen to this or
Mm.
hear this or read this, and what will they think? If this isn't something I've necessarily discussed with them. So I guess I've been careful to not make anybody feel badly about sharing my truth. And so that's something I still think about a lot. But who will care? Less so in general, like in the wider sphere, because I
Mhm.
feel that those who don't care don't matter anyway, I think there's a saying is, I think it's questionable who actually said this. Some people say it was Dr. Seuss, but someone else said it, someone else. I think it's those who mind don't matter and those who matter don't mind, or something like that. But I'm like, that always stuck with me because I'm like, the people who it doesn't land for, it doesn't need to land for them. That's okay. And for those who it does, then I'm just calling in more goodness, more community, more of my people. So less that, and also on the flip side of that, I'm also writing a book, and I feel like that's where my full story is going to be. And those who care enough will read that, and those who don't have to. So it's a decision at the end of the day for people to engage with it or not. And so that I pull myself out of that equation because it's a decision for them to engage or not.
Mm. Okay, I like that approach. It's the and this question, I like how it's bringing me different approach for different from different guests because it's
Hmm.
like always there is a new point of view, and I love that having the opportunity to have that because for
Mm.
me, I just see the things in a way, so that's good to learn from
Mm.
others. Yeah. So what would you say were some unexpected challenges that you faced when sharing your story? You have shared a bit about some experiences, but if you can
Mm.
go a bit more.
I would say probably sometimes feelings of shame. Just like, did I overshare? Did I present that well? Did I give enough that people feel good about this? Did I, um, I don't know, how are people receiving this, and not really knowing, guessing. And then all the kind of shame feelings that might come up around, vulnerability, like vulnerability and shame are very closely linked. Um, and then recognizing when that has come up for me, like I have literally gone back into therapy, and I'm still in therapy, and I think it's really important for somebody who does tell their story, especially if their story concerns difficult topics, that you do have support. Because I think the thing that I've learned from that though is that you get to have ownership of how you tell the story, and how you can't tell how someone's going to receive something. You can't understand how they're going to react to something. But what you can do is control the boundaries that you set around how people treat you. And so, like, for example, let's take business out of the equation. If I'm telling a friend or someone in person over drinks something, I might say to them, and this is how I've kind of learned to tell my story in smaller capacities to enable to do it on a larger scale, is saying, I'm about to share something that's quite difficult for me to talk about. Um, but I don't want you to treat me any differently, because I want you to look at me here today as who I am right now. And then I'll go
Mm,
on to tell. So I'm giving them the context and how I want them to treat me in return. So you can tell people what you want when it comes to telling your story as well. Like, I'm not looking for sympathy right now. I'm looking for XYZ. I'm not looking for encouragement right now. I'm not looking for advice right now. Like
mm,
whatever it may be. And so you get to take ownership of how you tell it, and therefore that does remove some of that shame, because there's some empowerment in that as well. But it still comes up. Definitely still comes up.
mm. Yeah, and I love how, yeah, that idea of providing context, it could
Mm.
be also useful when you are sharing your story for your business, or are you saying any other social environment? Because then, like, you are making like the basic foundations first, and then you are
Hmm.
providing the story.
Yeah.
And I would like to go a bit into something that you mentioned, how kind of this feeling of feeling forced to overshare
Mm.
because of what you might think is the right amount of
Mm.
information or details and so on. So how over the time have you practiced that, and how you have get into a way where you are better to
Mm.
balance like what you need and what you feel from
Yeah.
outside?
I think you kind of talked about it earlier a little bit, that it depends on the circumstances. And I think that I've kind of categorized in my head, like, okay, these are the circumstances where it's okay to say more. If people want more, if people request more, I'm happy to share it in these circumstances. If it's on a very public platform with a lot of people I don't know and someone asks me the question, I'll quite frankly say that's private. So I think it's just realizing where I'm comfortable and who I'm comfortable with.
You have been also featured in different big names in the industry. So how, like Business Insider, Forbes, and so on. So how you like get ready for this in terms of deciding how much you are going to share around your own story in this kind of spaces, let's say.
Yeah, I would say actually, I have a hard time with this sometimes, because I have worked with a couple of different editors, and behind the scenes, oftentimes you're writing the story yourself, then they're editing it and they're publishing it, right? There's a lot more actually just doing it from scratch than people think. And so I've had the opportunity to write things in such a way that I want them to be. but that doesn't guarantee that they're going to publish it in the way I want it to be published. So when I've handed over things to editors, I've been very clear about, please do not misconstrue these points. Please make sure that if you do link, you only link here. Please make sure that you don't change this word. This word is important to get across what I'm trying to say. And I would say 99.9% of the time that is honored. But if I didn't have those notes, and I've done that before, I've had editors write stories about me, and I'm like, I would not have said that that way. And that totally gives a different vibe to what I wrote, which is
Mm.
unfortunate. So that I learned that very quickly. You need to be very, very clear. And again, just setting boundaries with the editors. Like, I will be extremely upset and you do not have my permission if you publish it any differently to this word. Like, I mean this word, you know? And then there are obviously parts that don't matter so much. So like, have fun with that, but please do not misconstrue this part.
Mm. Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that, because I believe this is also applicable for ourselves in general, like having these boundaries, and setting the boundaries on how you want to approach. It could be that if you have someone writing for you or creating content for you, or helping you in some way, how okay how they are conveying my own story, and how I make sure that they are doing in a way that feels right to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that will, like, articulating in a way that feels right to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I actually struggle to hire writers in my business because of that. Because I guess I'm still pretty like attached to telling things a certain way. And I enjoy storytelling. Like I feel like it's a big part of my business that I don't necessarily feel like is a big part of it, but it is. I write my own newsletters, I do my own social media. I enjoy doing that. So it is a hard thing for me to outsource in that respect. But if I did have to, I would take that same approach. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, so Uh, what would you say has been a pivotal moment for you in your business and in your career, that maybe from the outside seemed like something smaller, or an insignificant moment?
Um, More recently, I started working with a single organization on a couple of projects in Eastern Europe. And what we're doing is we're supporting them with getting our training into the hands of young people who need opportunities, ultimately, vulnerable youth. And I feel like it seemed like it was a very snap decision, and that it was just like, yep, this makes sense. But the more I thought about it, and because it's a lot of work, it's taking a lot of work and a lot of time, and I'm enjoying it. And I think on the outside, people don't realize that all this is going on as well. But this wouldn't be happening if I hadn't told my story. There wouldn't be young people feeling aligned with this program, and that organization would never have reached out to me if I hadn't told my story, because that's how they saw a match. Um,
Mm.
so I think it's a really cool thing that has come out of sharing my story. And I think on the outside, people don't realize that I'm doing a lot of this stuff, or the depth of how much time it's taken, or those kinds of things. So I would say probably that. And that's been a very big change for me, because it's really changed the way I think about my offers and how they can help people beyond I'm selling a course to people, like there are many different ways that I can collaborate with organizations and get funding for things and make sure that it gets into the hands of those who it might ultimately benefit the most.
Mm. That's lovely. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, so, talking about pivotal moments, and like turning points in businesses, um, can you think about specific moment where you make some kind of transition in your business, and how you shared that?
I would say just thinking now, there was a time where this happened for me, where there was a very pivotal moment, and this was really at the beginning, where I had listened to the advice of all the gurus at the time who had said it's really important to pre-sell your course and then just make it after you validated it. And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And then I did that, and then I couldn't deliver what I'd promised.
Mm.
And that was probably the biggest fuck up. Sorry for my French. That was my biggest mess up to date in business, because that really took a toll on me and the community, probably me more than anyone actually, because of the guilt and the shame and the I can't believe I did this. Now I have to come clean, blah blah blah. And actually, that was a moment where I decided to bring my community in on that. And I was like, I'm not going to lie to them and tell them it's going to be ready in a month, because it's not going to be ready in a month. Here's what we can do. Here's what we can't do. Here are your options. You can stay, and here's what I'm going to give you in addition. And I'm going to give you support, and we can do some one-on-one sessions. And if you don't want to stay, full refund, no questions asked. But I want you to know what's happening, and I want you to know why we're here, and I want you to know that I'm learning as I go as well. And I'm here for you. And if you don't want to be here anymore, I totally understand. And so I was like, this is a moment where I can either completely ignore this problem, refund everyone, and go into hiding,
Yeah.
or I could work my ass off and deliver something that wasn't great, which I didn't want to do either. Or I could tell them what was happening and tell them that I'm still committed to this. And if they're still committed to it, I'm committed to them too. And so that's what I decided to do. And from that moment, I decided that I wanted full transparency in everything we were doing.
Mhm. Yeah, and I agree how going with that transparency, that level of transparency, it helps to bond the community and create like real, genuine connections. Because when you know that that person is telling you that, it's like, okay, they are open here and they are sharing this, which is a really um, putting your reputation as a professional here into my plate and all
Yeah,
that. So yeah, I agree that is a moment where it's super difficult, but at the end of this, it's like really bonding and really for like reinforcing that community aspect.
absolutely. And I feel like that event actually kind of cemented the foundations of what we still have today, is that we're all in this together, and that I'm not superhuman, and no one here is, and nobody knows everything, and we're all going to mess up at times, and it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to ask you also about if you have received at some point help shaping your messaging and like exploring your personal brand story and how you are going to share it.
Yes, I wouldn't say like specifically that I've hired someone specifically for that, but I did take a program by Kimra Luna many years ago
Mhm.
called Be True Brand You, which yeah, I guess yeah, it was that. Now I'm thinking about the name of it. But it was, it was a business building program from A to Z. But there was a heavy focus on being yourself, being authentic, embracing your weird, all of those things. And I, even in recent years, I've had a couple of just sort of one-off uh consulting calls with her, and those have always helped me like come back to, I guess, what do they call it, your North Star, or what is that term? This term where it's like
Yeah, yeah.
your guiding light. Like, she's kind of brought me back on track and be like, why are you saying all this stuff? That's not you. Like, where'd you get this crap from? Come back to Hannah, like, this is what I know you for. And I'm like, okay, cool. So it actually has been cool to have, even though she's not necessarily super in the business world anymore, this person who has guided me over the years and actually knows who I am.
Yeah.
And so as North Star, isn't it? I'm trying to think of
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
term
I
still.
think is that the term.
Yeah, she's always kind of brought me back to that and just been like, what do you, no, 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 this is Hannah, this is who I know. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. So it has been actually, as I'm talking about it now, more pivotal than I realize and more important than I realize, to have that support. And actually, I was gifted a scholarship to her program um years ago, and that was how I came to know of who she was. And a part of that was because she had seen me showing up and was like, she can be someone who can share her story well. And so yeah, so having her mentorship definitely encouraged me to always listen to my gut and my intuition, and to not fall prey to just doing things a standard way.
Yeah, and I love that because it's like just going back to your essence and like
Hmm.
who you truly are. Yeah, yes. Sometimes we forgot to listen to
Hmm.
ourselves and go with. There's a lot of
Absolutely.
noise sometimes, so yes.
Totally.
Yeah. So now a question that I like to make to all my guests. So, what could you say is the part of your personal brand story that surprises people the most?
I think it's that I don't have any degree or real like training in anything. Is that I've just learned everything myself, and still managed to have this kind of success. And that people in my world are having this kind of success and even surpassing my success, which is awesome to see. Um, all founded on like zero academic like credentials. I think a lot of people are surprised by that. And I think in general, a lot of people are surprised when they come into the virtual assistant space specifically, thinking that they need this stuff and they really don't. So yeah, I think that's a big one. And I think again, sharing my story around that is important for people because they realize that, okay, if I have the will to do this, I have access to internet, a computer, and some baseline skills, I can learn something and I can do something really substantial.
Yeah, and I know that other kind of business professions online in the online space can be like that, but especially VAs, it feels like you can build your path because there
Hmm.
are so many options and you
Yeah.
can niche down in so many different ways or specialize in different services or tools or so many options there that is like build your how is like these books like explore your
Build your own
adventure.
business. Yeah.
So something like that and yeah, I believe that this approach of being able to just finding a way to learn things and of
Hmm.
course if you have someone helping you that have done before is nice, but
Hmm.
otherwise it's like having this skill of figuring out things and not being like autonomous in your work. I feel that this is a good skill for VAs in general, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I also feel that when you are a virtual assistant, you can also embrace your story, right? It's not just oh,
Yeah.
you get to do the kind of work you want to do with the types of people you want to do it with. It's also you get to be you in all iterations of you, however that might change over time as well, which I think is one of the reasons that I naturally was drawn into this world as well myself. And now I'm so passionate about telling others about it. So yeah, I think it's just one of those roles where you really do get to be you in every
Mm,
way.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know if there is something else that you think we have missed and you would like to add.
I guess just like if you're feeling like you want to share something, if there's something that's weighing on you, ask yourself the question of, is this the right audience for this? Number one, will this benefit people by sharing? Number two, or do I need to work on this independently or with support before that? Like, I think those are the three sort of benchmarks when it comes to sharing elements of your story that may be trickier, that I always sort of run through. So maybe that's helpful to somebody.
Yeah, I believe so. So, thank you very much for all your insight and for being so generous at speaking about your own experiences. And so, if people want to learn more about you and all the ways that you can help them, where can they find you?
Sure. Thank you. Digital Nomad Kit, that's KIT, Digital Nomad KIT.com is where you're going to find everything that I do. If you want to become a VA, you can join our free 5-day challenge we run every 2 months. You can check out the full program, the Virtual Excellence Academy. If you want to hire somebody, you can also do that on the website. You want to read the blog, you want to connect me on social media, all on that website. All there. That's our home.
Cool. Yeah, so thank you again for being here. Has been lovely to have this conversation and learning a bit more about you and your story.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to Who Cares About My Story, the podcast on how sharing your personal brand story can impact your business. If you found this episode valuable, consider subscribing or leaving a review. Your feedback means a lot. Did something resonate with you today? Please share your thoughts on the podcast platform or on your socials. I would love to hear from you and give you a shout out. Just tag me on Instagram at Reme Mancera. I can't wait for you to meet our next guest. Until then, remember, your story is relevant and worth telling.